Hello guys, welcome back to another video in this React series. This is a continuation of my previous video on creating a responsive bootstrap form in ReactJS. If you have not watched that, feel free to go back and watch that video. I have provided the link for that video in the description as well. In the previous video, as you can see here, we have created a bootstrap responsive form in our ReactJS application. Here you can observe when we click on submit, it will accept null value as well. And there is no much validations in this one, and for age as well, if you put minus values, that will accept here. So these are some of the basic validations a form should have. In this video we'll enhance this form and add these validations to the fields of this form. Let's open the code editor where we have code for our form. To add validations to this form, first at the beginning of component we need to import useState from React. Let me import that one along with React. This useState is to manage the form input values and validation states which we are going to use in our functional component for our validations. Next, within this component, let's create some variables for each form input and their corresponding value states. Here I have created name state for this name input field, and similarly email and age state for this email and age input fields. And we have initialized the state values to null, and we have defined 3 more states to handle the errors whichever occurs when user enters or whenever user left it blank or not add the data correctly. Next step is let's create one function which will perform the form validation and prevent the form submission if there are any validation errors. Here I have added e.prevent default. This line will prevent the default behavior of form submission, which would typically involve the page reloading, navigating to a new page, or etc. By calling e.preventDefault, the function ensures that the form submission is handled using the JavaScript code which we are going to add it here. Next comes our main part, that is the logic. So let me add some logic here. Here I have added some logic for our validations. This name.trim is equals to blank will check if the name variable is empty or consists any white spaces which user are going to add in this input field. If the name is empty or it contains only white spaces, then it will set an error message by calling name is required. If the name is valid, it clears any previously set error message by calling set error name and by setting it to blank. Similarly for email validation, first we have defined a regular expression here which we are going to use for our validation. This regular expression checks if the email which is entered by the user matches a valid email format or not. That will be done by using this email pattern. If the email is invalid, it will set an error message by saying invalid email address. If the email entered is valid, then if there is any error message previously set, that will be set to null by this function. And the third validation which we have added is for age validation. Here initially we are going to check whether age is a number or not, and we have defined some more conditions here. Age should not be less than 1 and it should not be greater than 150. You can customize this one or add any other age number here. If the age entered in the field does not meet this criteria, an error message will be shown to the user by saying invalid age. If the age is valid, then the previous error message will be set to null. Once this validation code is done, let's update the JSX now. That is another main part which we need to do it here. Here for each input field which we have added earlier, let's bind a value property to its corresponding state variable and add an element to display the validation error if it exists. First for this input element name, let me add an value and an onChange event. So here value is equals to name is a dynamic binding that associates the input's value with the name variable. It means that the current value displayed in the input field is controlled by the name variable. Then we have defined a onChange event handler here. So whenever user types some name into this input field, the setName function is called with a new value which is obtained by this e.target.value. This allows the value in the input field to be updated in real time as the user types. That's the binding which we have done for this input field. Next, to show the error message, we'll add a conditional rendering here. As you can see here, this is a conditional rendering statement. It checks if the name error variable is truthy, which means it has a value. If it does, it renders a div element with error message which we have added in this validation. So if there is any error, this text will be shown along with this input field. So that's the validation we have added for our first field. Similarly, let's add validation for other two fields as well. Now we have validation for email field and for age field as well. Once we are done with this one, final step which we need to do here is update the form tag. If you scroll up here, we have a form tag. So whenever we click on a submit button, we need to add a event handler here so that it will call the event handler function which we have added here, that is handle submit. So for that one, for this form, let's add an event handler by name on submit. So whenever this form is submitted, this function will get called, and within this function we are going to do the validations, and if there is any error message we are going to show along with the form elements. So with all these steps we have added a form validation to our Bootstrap form. Now when user comes and submits the form, it will check for these errors and display validation messages if necessary. So let's save this file and go back to the browser. And now if you click on submit button directly, you can see there is a error message which is shown along with these input fields. And not only that one, along with that blank, we have added some more validations to this one. For example, if I add email incorrectly here, and when I click on submit button, still it will show this error message. Until I add a proper email ID here, it will throw this message. So once I add a proper email, you can observe that error message is not appearing. Similarly, if we add any negative numbers, it will show this message. And if we add a proper age here, and when we try to submit, then it will hide that error message. And similarly for this name field as well, as it is a blank, if we add proper name here, then this submit will work fine. Then these validations will hide the error messages. So successfully we have implemented the validations to the form here. This is a quite common requirement in our applications development. Hope you will find this helpful. That's it guys for this video. Let me know your questions or feedbacks in the video comments. Thanks for watching this. If you like this video, please click on like button, share it with others and subscribe to my channel.